Yes, the three constants in the F1 fandom. Coming up with conspiracy theories when your fave isn't performing as well as their teammate, refusing to take off the rose-coloured nostalgia glasses, and complaining every time one driver or team is winning with any kind of consistency. Look, I gotta say, if you're constantly complaining about domination errors in Formula 1, then maybe you need to ask yourself why you keep watching. Kia ora, I'm Kimmy. I talk about Formula 1, the world's second worst accent, and sometimes it really feels like a lot of F1 fans are stuck in a relationship with a sport that's a lot like continuing to hang out with someone you don't really like very much, who you constantly complain about with your other friends. Was that kind of a clumsy metaphor? Yeah, probably, but I think it's also kind of true. And that's not to say that there aren't legitimate things to complain about with F1. Of course there are. I do it all the time. Complaining is fun. My opinion isn't any more valid than the average Redditor just because I have a camera and a YouTube account and so my face to my opinions rather than calling myself Leclerc Fracker 69 and pretending I'm a 52-year-old who's been watching since, I don't know, 1982, but actually started watching 2 years ago and still has no idea who the KK Rosberg is. But to be fair, anyone out there who's doing that, I'm sorry you feel like you have to. The gatekeeping is rough, I know, I get it. You're no less valid. We need new fans coming into the sport, and it sucks that you feel like you have to pretend to feel welcome. Also, if your username is Leclerc Fracker 69, I am so sorry. It's the first thing that came to mind. But there's always these things that just crop up every year and they have you asking, do you actually like this sport, or are you trapped in a toxic relationship with it and spending yet another 20-something race season telling yourself that things are going to change this year? It's a sunk cost fallacy. Maybe it's time to accept that the other side of this friendship has always kind of been like this and you just don't really vibe with it a lot of the time. And domination errors specifically are one of these things that are just kind of inevitable. Unlike other sports, motor racing is as much, if not more, about technology as it is about sporting prowess. And when I say sporting prowess, I am talking about the whole team here and not just the people in the cockpit. Formula 1 is this ramped up to the max. Top tier single-seater prototypes where every team has to construct their own car from the ground up based on a tight set of regulations. And as is the case with any kind of technology, some people will always get it a little bit more right than the others every time a new fad comes around, or in F1 cases, regulations, and this has historically been mostly the case with Formula 1. So now that we're past the halfway point of the 2025 season and it's pretty much nailed on that McLaren is going to clinch both titles this year and just a matter of which of their drivers take home the biggest piece of the individual silverware, the boring season narrative has started cropping up again. Or it did a few months ago, to be fair. I'm just only now bothering to talk about it. And I get it. You're still getting over the max factor. And we're really hoping for 1 year where we'd have a multi-team fight at the top. And of course, before that, you were still getting over Mercedes' decade -3 streak. And before that, Sebastian Vettel and Red Bull winning 4 in a row. And oh God, there were a few years there where things got really interesting, and to be fair, Seb had to fight them off a bit in 2010 and 2012, and Braun really the bed when they couldn't afford to upgrade their car anymore, so things got a bit tense in 2009. But then Renault and Ferrari and Michael Schumacher and Williams. Wait, is the concept of a multi-team championship fight for the driver's title the exception rather than actually the norm? And I get it. I do. I too really enjoy a fight at the top that's got more than one team involved, but you're trying to tell me that this season is just as dull as Rubens Barrichello and Valtteri Bottas being told to roll over for their teammates year in, year out. All the while lauding the achievements of Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton and arguing over which of them is the GOAT. And going on about how great their achievements were and how fantastic their championship winning seasons were. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that either of them aren't the greatest to ever do it. Both of them are in their own way, as is Max, as is Senna, as is Niki Lauda or Jim Clark or Fangio, or whoever was constantly demonstrating talent, both sporting and political, in their respective eras. The point is, McLaren domination is boring to people who don't like McLaren. And I'm sure if this fight were between Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, we'd have the same complaints, just different people complaining. And it can be hard to be objective about these things because sports are generally a very tribalist kind of thing to get yourself involved in, but Formula One seems to generate this complaint a lot more than, say, football or athletics or, I don't know, tennis. I follow quite a lot of people who really like tennis, and I have never once seen anyone complain that every men's Grand Slam final has either Sinner or Alcaraz or both of them in it nowadays, because they remember that before then it was Djokovic, and before then it was Nadal and Federer. And you know what? I think the people who I know who watch tennis just really like tennis. And it's not that I trust Google nowadays, but even typing in "is tennis boring nowadays" Reddit, the only way to reliably get an answer on the internet, mostly just netted results that complained about how the tennis community can be boring, or how someone's decided they think tennis is actually a boring sport and they don't really like watching it very much, and that it's because they don't have a favourite player anymore. Props to your self-awareness there, random Reddit user. And granted, a lot of this can probably be attributed to the fact that F1 and the vast majority of motorsport don't have multiple head-to-head rounds before reaching the crescendo. But that's never been the case. That's never been what Formula One is. Would people complain less about these domination eras if each doubleheader had a series of knockout head-to-heads culminating in a grand finale between probably the same two drivers 80% of the time? No, of course not, because that's not what the sport is, and that's a horrible idea. Would they prefer a NASCAR-style playoff system? I mean, some might, but I imagine that would be a hard no from the vast majority, even if it would open up opportunity for shock championship eliminations, because people don't like things to feel contrived. And while this season doesn't have the added context of the implosion of a friendship that went back well over a decade, this Piastri and Norris battle of 2025 has a lot of similarities with Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg back in 2016. And we fucking lived for that shit, just like we loved Vettel and Webber constantly bitching about each other during their tenure as teammates. So maybe the answer to this is for Formula One management to tell McLaren to start flipping the narrative, get the public invested in a more toxic side of their rivalry rather than constantly telling us they're all buddy-buddy and they're totally fucking fine. Oh wait, that's Drive to Survive's job. My bad. And I think this observation kind of says a lot. Now, I am absolutely not trying to say that I don't thoroughly enjoy a good toxic rivalry between teammates. I eat that shit out, but I also don't let an apparent lack of it suddenly change my perception of the sport that I love. There is so much more going on and so many more minor battles happening further down the field, so many things to get excited for, that most of the time who actually wins the championship, to me at least, is not really of that much consequence. And sure, if this was Albon and Sainz fighting at the front, then I would absolutely have a different perspective on that. Two of my faves and my fave team up there battling it out for the championship would be, well, actually that would just be really fucking stressful. That sounds goddamn awful. I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. That's like the plot of a horror movie. Just let them suffer in the midfield for eternity. If it were Albon and Sainz fighting at the front, then I would probably be on the edge of my seat more, but my main enjoyment of Formula One would still come from, well, watching Formula One. Using my brain for an hour and a half every weekend doing maths and thought experiments to see who'll pick up that 1 point for 10th while watching people drive around in weird shaped loops. And not that that's the correct way to watch, because the only correct way to watch any sport is the way that you enjoy watching it. The problem arises when people want to enjoy watching a certain way but refuse to acknowledge that the thing that they're watching has never really consistently lent itself to that kind of experience. And any change to that would make it not really the same thing anymore. It's like opening up your streaming app of choice and being presented with two films titled Life. One is from 1999 and stars Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy as two men wrongfully convicted and follows them as they grow old while incarcerated. A social commentary comedy drama. The other is a 2016 sci-fi horror movie that gives Ryan Reynolds top billing even though he gets killed before the first act's even barely started. And as the cultured film that you are, aware of your own preferences and able to tell from a film poster what the kind of general vibes of a movie are, and knowing that horror movies aren't really your thing, but that the idea of a buddy comedy / period drama is right up your alley, you of course click on, okay, the metaphor at the start was horrible, but this one's worse. I don't like horror movies, and I absolutely saw Life in the cinema, so I can't talk. In conclusion, look, I'm not telling you how to enjoy your sport here, not at all, but I am telling you that if you don't actually enjoy the sport, then it's okay to stop. It's okay, I promise. It's even okay to stop watching for a season or two until things get interesting again. That doesn't make you a bad fan. It's okay to actually not watch races and just watch the highlights and clips, or people who do race recaps on YouTube, or read the news. That's how I enjoyed Formula 1 for ages after we cancelled Sky and before F1 TV became a thing. And you know what? I had a hell of a lot of time to hang out with people in the real world, so like, bonus benefits. None of my friends enjoy F1, it's just me and Biz, and it's very lonely. And yes, it's more exciting to see stuff for the first time unspoiled. But it's also a lot of fun to go back and watch select races and championships in retrospect. If that's still going to give you your fix and frustrate you less, then there ain't nobody stopping you. I wasn't lucky enough to have access to races in 2016, so I watched the entirety of that season 2 years ago. It was still really exciting, even though I knew the outcome and most of what happened that year. But for the love of God, if you're going to complain about something as routine in F1 as one team or driver dominating, then before you go and start posting about it on the internet, I implore you to ask yourself, why am I so mad about this? And is it because I don't actually like F1 very much if it's not my team winning? Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please consider clicking one of the important clicky buttons. They really do help my channel. If you enjoy to support people on Patreon, then the link is down in the description as well as right here on the screen. Thank you so much to my patrons. You guys are awesome, and I'll catch you all next time.